It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Been looking forward to this show here today. Okay, our guest is Francis Scarcella. I probably butchered it, but we'll find out in a second. Our guest is Francis Scarcella. He's the author of the book Miranda Barbour, Inside the Mind of a Teenage Killer. Fascinating story of this young girl from Alaska. I believe I heard a story that she punched Sarah Palin's daughter in the face in high school. So maybe we'll get into that too as well. We're also going to be talking in the second part of the show about the case of Barbara Miller. Our guest, Francis Scarcella here, is a reporter in Pennsylvania, and he got this cold case reopened. The guy's doing a lot of great work. Francis Scarcella, are you there?
I am. How are you today?
How am I pronouncing your name? Am I doing it right?
No, you did it perfect. I'm surprised with the accent. You did it perfect. I'm impressed.
You like that, huh? Okay.
I'm impressed.
Mr. Scarcella, do you have a website that we should know about?
You know what? I got to be honest with you. I'll tell you right out of the gate. I'm one of those reporters that just does my job. I don't really go out. I don't promote anything. I don't really look for anything. I just kind of do my job. So I'm not into the flash of it, part of it, per se. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I just kind of am the guy that I walk down the street and I have several people always come up to me with different news stories or news tips and stuff like that. And I think it's because I don't do those kind of things. So to be honest with you, I can't even tell you that I would like you to go out there and you go to my Facebook. I have my personal Facebook, Francis Scarcella.
Yeah, it's Francis Scarcella, then a reporter. So it's pretty easy to find. I didn't have too much trouble finding you. Tell us about yourself, though. Who is Francis Scarcella?
I had a crazy life. I lived a crazy life. I am now a reporter here in Sunbury, Pennsylvania for the Daily Item. Great newspaper, great people I work with. Prior to that, I worked in the world of professional wrestling, believe it or not, and I am a Wild Samoan graduate. So I graduated from the Wild Samoan Training Center around the same time as somebody who has become, I guess, if you want to say a household name, but Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is off of the Wild Samoan's nephew. So I trained right around that same time period, and I will travel the world with professional wrestling, believe it or not. But I always had a passion for writing and mingling with people, and so I ended up going to school, and here I am. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell, to be honest with you.
Okay, talk about a curveball. Okay, you know what I mean? Now you were.
There you go. I know. That's like I said. I didn't really get to talk to you prior to. You had no idea what you were getting into with me.
Well, that's the coolest thing, man. So you were actually a wrestler.
I was actually a manager. So what I did is my job was to go out and be a mouth and yell and scream and get people to be into the show. So not an announcer, but a manager. So yes, I got beat up. There's clips of that all over the place, and one of my best friends in the world to this day is Head Shrinker Samu, who's actually in Japan right now listening. He is one of the Head Shrinkers, WWE Tag Team Champion, the legend. Rikishi, the great Yokozuna. Yokozuna was one of my very close friends. Matt on Hawaii, Rosie from WWE. I mean, the list can go on, going down. Bam Bam Bigelow. I mean, I'm an old man, so.
I tell you, I love it, man. And people have because when I was a kid growing up watching wrestling, but now you look at Jesse Ventura, became governor. We just had another wrestler who was just elected, I believe, governor as well. The McMahons went on, they got a position.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a real stepping stone these days to get yourself out there, and it seems like a lot of intelligent people. I guess you can't be a slouch.
No, operate. I mean, everybody gives that business because it gets the bad rap of this and that. But I got to tell you, I mean, my experiences with pro wrestling it's been a family. I still am in contact with many of them today. One of my good friends, Bob Hansen, comedian up in New York, great guy. Another. I mean, there's just. The list can go on and on and on of people that I've met that I've kept as part of my family to this day for 20 plus years. So, I mean, it's, you know, you go up and show up at a wrestling event and it's like a reunion. So I'm proud of that. I'm happy, you know, that I'm blessed that I got to have those people remain in my life.
Yeah, I gotcha. And that's a very cool aspect to your life there.
I'll tell you something. Let me tell you this while you're talking about that. It's kind of funny because I traveled with Jimmy Superfly Snuka. So I've heard the stories, and I mean, obviously everybody, if you don't know the story of Jimmy Superfly Snuka, who he was arrested 35 years after the fact for allegedly killing his ex-girlfriend. Neither here nor there, whether it did or didn't, I don't know the answer to that. But I got to, so I know him because I traveled with him, and then I had to cover his case as it progressed. And unfortunately, he passed away before anything were to happen. But that's the kind of world that you live in, you know. So you had those. Nobody got to speak to Jimmy Superfly Snuka, but I did. I traveled with the guy, you know. So. Yeah,
I did a show about that. I did a show about Snuka and his ex-girlfriend there. But didn't he actually confess to that in a book? He wrote about it in a book that kind of implicated himself.
My experiences with Jimmy Snuka are this. I'll tell you a fast story since we have the time, but I'll tell you it real fast. Yeah. So I used to drive him around and go to various places. And again, this is, you know, way later on in life. So, you know, he would tell his road stories and blah, blah, blah. But he never really got into that story, and I never really asked at the time. I just, you know, it is what it is. But so I stopped driving with him. He was living out in Las Vegas or somewhere out west, and we ended up being on the same show again up in Boston, Massachusetts. So we're up there, and he comes over to me. He says, "Hey," he says, "you know, brother, why didn't you not pick me up for the town?" And I said, "Well, Jimmy, you live across the country. I would have had to leave a little early." He goes, "No, brother." He says, "Yeah." He says, "You leave 2 days early. We drive in." So he started to get a little, you know, losing his mind here a little bit here and there. And then he turns around, and I said, "Well, Jimmy, how'd you get here now if I didn't pick you up?" He says, "They flew me in a chopper." And I looked around. I said, "You know, you're 2.5 hours from an airport. You had to get here somehow." And sure enough, there was a chopper sitting in a field right outside the building. So I don't know. You know, that was Jimmy Snuka.
Okay.
So they're pretty much my experiences as far as it goes with him. I didn't really ever get into anything like that with him. And again, you know, as a reporter, I kind of look forward to the case, covering it with him, because if that was the case, then you know what? Then you got to pay for what you did. And I'm a firm believer, and I always was a firm believer in doing the right thing. I don't speed. I don't do anything. Everything I do in life is clean. And that's how I decided to live my life. And, you know, here I am today. So.
Yeah, I hear you. It's always a lot easier to just do the right thing, keep your nose straight. I got a show by Jimmy Snuka. It's in the members section. People can go check that out. Now, you're here today because of his book, Miranda Barbour, Inside the Mind of a Teenage Killer. Can you tell, who was Miranda Barbour?
I'll tell you the Miranda Barbour story. The Miranda Barbour story is, so Sunbury is a little small, sleepy town here, maybe 10,000 people or so. And it's been, you know, you get your average, you know, domestic fights that end up bad or somebody shoots somebody because of, but they always know each other. So this one was a little different. So November of 2013, I'm like every other, you know, I'm out there in the trenches, and I was across the street sitting in with the judge discussing a story I was doing with him, and I get a phone call that they said they found a body up the road. So I'm like, it's going to be a domestic thing. Who knows? I'll wait it out. So I waited. It was freezing cold. So I waited, and I decided to go up there. And I said, I get up there, and I'm standing there, and one of the officers that I knew come over, and I said, "So what's going on?" He said, "I got to tell you, this one's not good." And I'm like, "Well, okay. Is it drug related?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Do they know the person?" He said, "I don't know." So that kind of piqued my interest. And now here comes the rest of the media. Everybody comes running. So you have 20 different television and radio and newspapers, and everybody comes running. So you know what I did? I left. I said, you know what? I'm not going to deal with 20 different newspapers and everybody standing around in the freezing cold. I know my sources. Something's there. They're going to let me know. So I left. I went to lunch. I come back about 2 hours later, still no answers, still no anything. And I started to get my people that were, you know, on the ground. And I started to hear that this is kind of a crazy situation, that this guy was brutally murdered. And they had no idea who it was. So then I decided, well, we're going to use the media, and I'm going to continuously do stories until something happens. And I wrote, I think, 60-some stories in the meantime, every day. And then all of a sudden, I get a phone call. They found this person who they arrested, Miranda. So I show up at the arraignment in Pennsylvania. They bring me in, and she comes leading in, and she looked like this 15-year-old little girl. Nobody knew who they were, the whole 9 yards. Nobody knew anything. But I'll back you up in the process. In the process of me writing the stories, I get a phone call at my desk, and it's from Elytte Barbour, who is her husband. And he says, I want to talk about my wife because she was now arrested, and I want to talk because she is not a killer. I said, okay, well, when do you want to come in? He said, well, I don't drive. They took our car. So I went down and picked him up. Me and Elliot drove back from his house about 8 miles away, right back to the newspaper. And I looked him dead square in the face, and I said, buddy, I don't know you from Adam, and you don't know me from Adam, but I'm telling you right now, you make one false move in this car. You have no idea my background, and I don't know yours, but I will slam this car head on into a pole, and we'll both go down. But there is not a chance on God's green earth that you are going to do something out of the ordinary. And he was as polite as could be, came back, told his story that his wife was out for delightful conversation, and she would meet up with men. Basically, she was a hooker. But never had sex, just went out to meet guys and get paid for it. Like a call, in those services, So anyway, make a long story short, I continuously wrote the stories, and one day I get a letter, and it's from Miranda Barbour, who says, I want you to come in and interview me. And I said, okay. So we set it up. I had a little bit of a hassle getting into the jail. They didn't want her to talk, the whole 9 yards. At this point, she's still claiming self-defense, that this man, Troy LaFerrara, was grabbing at her, and that's it. She defended herself. That was their story so far.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. First of all, Elliot, the husband. Now, you mentioned that when you had him in the car, you start telling him, hey, man, I'll take you down. I'll crash the car if you give me a problem. Was he a big, intimidating kind of guy that would bring that up? No. He could have been 5 foot nothing and 85 pounds. He was nothing. But I don't know what this guy has. I just know that there was bad things from my sources. I just know that they're not good people. There's things that are going on that but he wasn't arrested yet. But I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to talk to him. So I did inform, Sunbury police, that I was going in the whole 9 yards, what was going on. Right.
You know what I mean? So they kind of knew where I was going. And I'm friends with all of those guys on a personal level, on a professional level, on everything. The guy in charge right now, Brad Hare, great guy. I hope he's listening. They're all good guys that are there. So I bring him back. I do the interview with him. We run it the next day. A couple of days later, I get it from Miranda to come in and see her. So,
well, again, before we get too far ahead, describe what the actual crime was that Miranda was being charged with.
At that point, they had charged her with meeting a man on Craigslist for sex. She shows up, picks him up. They drive to Sunbury across this bridge here, and she stabs him 80 sometimes. And why they said she did it is she said because this wasn't originally in the initial report. So for me to tell you that, I'd have to go a little forward.
Okay.
So basically, I go in, I do the interview with her, and she admits that she did it. She killed him because her and her husband wanted to kill someone together. They wanted to meet someone, and they wanted to kill someone together for no reason, just to do it. Period, just to do it. And in the process of that conversation, she tells me she killed 22 other people. But I guess that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, but what was the lead up to that, though? You go in there and you just start chatting away. Doesn't she want to get out of prison? Why would she suddenly just confess to you?
She said in the interview, which is on, I have it. I got the audio of the actual interview. She said that she wanted to go to jail because she had a demon that lived inside of her, and she did not want her daughter to be raised by bad people. So it was better for her to go to jail for the rest of her life. So in the process, they met a man. They failed 2 other times. They tried this 2 other times, but it just didn't work out, and it failed. So unfortunately, this guy's the one that got in the car. And
this is where he would hide in the back seat under a blanket, and she would be in the front seat with the guy.
That's correct. So what happened is they pick them. She picks them up. They start driving across. They use a signal. Did you see the stars tonight? She says it. Nobody pops up. She says it again. Did you see the stars tonight? Nobody says it. Nobody pops up. Finally, they get to the house, and she gets mad because he wasn't doing it. And she leans around, taps him. He jumps up, wraps a cord around this man's neck. She starts stabbing him. Troy fights back, hits him. He kind of got busted up a little bit. He backs away. Troy tried to get out of the car, Miranda told me. She walks around the car door. This is right in front of the guy's house. Walks around the car door and was slamming his leg back in the car until I guess he was hurting. So he put his leg back in the car, and at that point he was starting to succumb to the stab wounds. And then they drive him up about 2 blocks away, and they dump him in the woods.
Okay, fascinating. Yep. And how old was she at this time?
She was 18, just turned.
18 years old, and she already had a child?
She had a child, yeah. It was a baby, I guess, less than a year, I think, just right around a year.
And do we know who was watching the baby when this murder was being taken place?
Who was watching the baby? Yeah, she was actually living with – Elytte had a friend. That's how they ended up here. Elytte had a friend who was living in the Selinsgrove area, so they came up to stay with him. So he was there with a couple other roommates, so they were all staying there. So when they decided to do this, on Elliott's birthday, they decided to go do this. The baby was at home with at that apartment where they were staying.
Now, what about the roommate? Do you think the roommate was aware of what these guys had planned?
The roommate claims that they did not have any idea till after the fact, till everything started going down and they came in because, you know, they kind of start tracing cell phones and stuff like that. So the roommate said they had no idea. None of those people were charged. I kind of do believe that they didn't know till after the fact. And then they were they were just scared to death. They were kids, you know, you're talking 18, 19-year-old kids at the time. So I think they were scared to death of the whole situation. And this sick individual, Miranda, really manipulated a lot of people. I mean, she just did. And she has that in her. I mean, I sat across from her. I must have visited with her over 100 times. And I just, because I was fascinated, I was like, I wanted to hear every single thing because when I went into that prison the first time and she told me that she admitted to killing him and blah, blah, blah. So I get the confession. So I already know walking out of here, I now am going to be in a predicament because I have her confession.
Right.
But then for her to turn around and for her to say, and by the way, I also killed more people. And I said, well, how many more people did you kill? And she said, less than 100. I said, nobody on God's green earth is going to believe that you killed 100 people. I said, so I need a number. And she said, I stopped counting at 22. And she went into the most detailed stories that you could possibly imagine. And it's not that I believed it, but I was fascinated by it because it's like, this girl must have thought of this forever to think of these situations. So I came back out and I called Sunbury Police right away. They came, took the video and the audio of everything and blah, blah, blah. And I waited because it was on Valentine's Day is when I did the interview, believe it or not. Valentine's Day, 2014. I waited 2 days and we ran it as a Sunday story. And by 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone started ringing from every which direction in the world. And I must have appeared on 150 radio channels that day. I was on Fox, CNN, MSNBC, everywhere possible. I was on the Dr. Phil show, which was a whole story in itself. Don't believe everything you see from these so-called professionals.
Yeah.
I was on, Hannity, just anybody you could possibly imagine I was on. And they were all fascinated by this thing. And I had said to each and every one of them, the reason why, because people say, oh, you know, nowadays with fake news, that's now, but with, you know, we're putting stories out of people say, here was my deal. My deal was, let's just say, okay, nobody believed at 18 years old this girl killed 22 people. But what if she killed one more? I would think that there's a family out there that would want to know that. So I chose at that time, and I thought about it long and hard, and I said, you know what? If that's the case and there is even one person that's missing, that family doesn't know where she's at or where he's at, then my job is to say maybe this could be the situation that could give peace to those families. And that's why I decided to continuously pound the pavement with this story to prove that each and every single thing she said was a complete and utter lie. That's why.
So you haven't been able to confirm any of these allegations that she made that she's killed more than this one murder?
None was confirmed, and I spoke to every state officials from all over the country, and nothing was confirmed. And then she later came back and she admitted to lying. She admitted to lying. I just got done shooting a BBC documentary on this, Miranda Barbour, Serial Killer or Liar. That you can actually go check out on BBC, and you can watch it, and you'll see. She conducted another interview with another reporter later on, and she admitted that she lied, and because people made her an animal, and all kind of crazy garbage nonsense that she put out.
Okay, well, let's cover a couple of things here. Now, first of all, in the crime that she's doing time for right now, did she go to trial, or did she confess? She cut a deal? What happened there?
Yeah, she cut a deal. She was scheduled to go to trial. They tried everything under the sun. Make no mistake about it. Let me tell you, make no mistake about it. The girl had a horrific life. Yeah. She was molested. She was molested by family members. She had a horrific life. There's no doubt about it. But it doesn't justify, murder. I mean, it just there's people that have horrific lives all over the place, but it doesn't justify those things. So she did have a horrific life. They tried a couple different avenues, didn't work out. So she eventually pled guilty to second-degree murder, which still gave her life in prison. In my opinion, she was better off rolling the dice. But they were going after the death penalty, so they took the death penalty to take. But she claimed she wanted to die a million times over and then decided not to go for the death penalty. So I don't know. Once they made the deal, that got pulled, and she's just in jail for the rest of her life. I mean, and it's going to be a long, long time.
No possibility of parole?
Go ahead.
No possibility of parole?
0.
Okay. Now, are you still in touch with her now?
No, absolutely not. I decided after the fact that she was lying because again, hey, you want to tell me your story, and you want me to use my keyboard or my pen to voice your concerns, because that's what we're supposed to do. Give people who don't have that. If you read every police story, 99% of the time, all you see is the police side. You never see the other side. I always vowed I was going to get both sides of the story, no matter what it is. And then that's for people to decide, but I get both sides. I gave her both sides, and she lied. So I chose to say, you're done to me now. You lied. There's no families out there that were hurt because of you. I did what I had to do, and I took it as far as I can go.
Now, you mentioned that she had a horrific childhood. Have you been able to confirm that, or do you think that might be a lie, too?
No, that's confirmed. I did speak to judges from Alaska. She was molested at like age 3 and 4 years old, like violently. Like that's all confirmed. That's real. I mean, that did happen. And I think that's part of the cause that led her to be who she is.
Yeah.
So that's all confirmed.
And what about the story about her punching Sarah Palin's daughter? Have you confirmed that?
I don't know. She never told that to me. I've heard that. I've read that of different places. She has never once said that to me. And again, when I'm telling you I spoke to her and met with her more than 100 times over the course of those 2 years in jail, I was there twice a week. She never once brought that up to me. So I don't know if that's true or it's not true. I know it made good print for people to put on. And again, that next day, I read stories all over the place. I had a couple stories, a couple front page stories in the New York Post that were legitimate stories. So, I started reading different stories from people that they're putting out, and she did this and she did that. And so I don't know if it's true or it's not true. I didn't really pay attention to the hoopla. I only knew what I knew, and I only wrote what she told me. So the Sarah Palin thing, I don't know. But it does sound good. She punched Sarah Palin's daughter in the face. Sounds great on print, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, one more thing, real quick. Back to the book. The book is called Miranda Barbour, Inside the Mind of a Teenage Killer. But is this book available? Because it says that the date on it is 2035.
Yep. And I'll tell you why. Here's my situation with the book. You can get copies. There are copies that can be made. Okay. This is where you're going to say this man is he's just I'm not like anybody that you've ever talked to or met. I'm going to promise you that.
Okay.
I had various problems going through it because of the fact I didn't like the creativeness that wasn't real. And I don't do that. I don't glorify. I don't put something in that I don't know to be true, and I will not ever do that. And that is where I had my disagreement with the company itself. And with that being said, It will be, and there are some that are there, but there's no way. The second part of it is because I also became friends with the victim's family, and Troy's mother is an elderly woman. She's a great woman, and I was not going to put on paper things about her son that were not true, number one, and number two, to hurt a woman who just went through a horrific situation. So I decided at this point right now I'm going to hold out, and the reason being is because I can. I have all the documents. I have everything that's legitimate. It's authorized. As a matter of fact, I have the actual authorization letter from Miranda to write it. So what her part is true. The parts of the creative minds, like the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, is where I didn't get along with. So in the meantime, I decided I am not going to, by any means, profit off of a man's death, especially for it not to be true. I refuse to do it. I won't do it. And until that is cleared up, then it would be a different story, if that makes any sense to you. It's an integrity thing. It's an integrity thing, and I'm a man of my word, and I'm a man of honor, and I just won't do it.
Okay, but you're saying now the book is not available on Amazon, but it is available somehow. You can get a copy of this book. How would that be?
Yep, because we did print some. There was some were done. Some were done, and then the changes were supposed to be made. So that's why I say, and it will be there. You will get it, because eventually it's going to come out. And the 35, don't pay attention to that. You will start seeing here in the next couple months. You'll start seeing it. Things start to happen. But like I said, I'll send you one anytime you want, and then you can read the actual the truth, and not a glorification of things that weren't real.
And that's because some of the allegations she made about Troy, that she claimed she was 16 years old or something like that, and he still went ahead with it. You don't believe any of that part? I
don't believe it. It's never proven. There's never been any kind of anything from police for that to say. So I'm not going to give a murderer the opportunity, who is already a proven liar, to say false things about a man who can't defend himself because of this horrific incident, and let his family go through that kind of aggravation over it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? That's just, like I said, that's an integrity and an honor thing. So
sure, if the guy can't defend himself because of allegations from the person that killed him, you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. So it's like
about as one side as you can get.
Correct. If you go out, it's exactly right. If you decide to go out and kill 30 people and then you say all bad things about them, I can't talk to those people. So it's just not my thing to do.
Now, she married Elytte. She was 18 years old. She was married to Elytte. What age was she when she got married?
18. She got married 2 weeks prior to this whole thing.
Oh my God. 2 weeks prior to, my God, what are these people? Yeah. Were they employed? Any kind of employment?
She was not. He was working as a dishwasher up at a restaurant up here. So they just got jobs. And I mean, listen, I went as far into this story again. We're rewinding here 4 years, so you got to bear with me. But I went as far as this story to find the receipt to the ring that they bought, because I thought they robbed the man of some money. And right after, she had posted on her Facebook that she got an engagement ring. So I went as far back to get the receipts to see if that money was used from the robbery. And in Pennsylvania, it's a mitigating circumstance, which means that's what gave her the death penalty. There was motive behind it. She didn't just kill the man. She stole from him, too. And so I went as far as to get all the receipts from it. I don't know if any of that money was used. I don't think it was. I don't think he had that kind of money on him. I think she only got a couple $100, and they decided to go to a burger joint, have food, and then down to a strip club. So I think that's where the money went.
Yeah, that's right. Well, didn't something odd happen, too, at the strip club later on that night?
Again, falsehoods. I don't know anything about anything being odd. The only thing odd about that whole day is that they got pulled over on the way down because she had a tail light out, and that was right after they cleaned the car. And the police never even looked inside the car. Never do. So she got a ticket. She got a speeding ticket the same day.
Wait a second.
Or some kind of traffic violation. Yeah, after the murder, they got pulled over.
And this is a horrifically bloody murder in the front seat of this car.
It was that night, so nobody would have known. You know.
Wow.
In the defense of police, they wouldn't have known. It was just a random stop. Their taillight was out or something. and she got randomly stopped, gave them the license, and they moved on. And at that point, they didn't find the body till the next day. So.
Yeah. But it is amazing, because you get pulled over by the cops. They can see that little roach in your ashtray from 20 feet away. But they can't.
But I know, but you can't see the 17 gallon of blood that was inside the car. I get it. I know.
They overlooked that part. Now, what about this bit where she claims that she was in a satanic cult? What do you make of that?
I believe that she was. I got to tell you, I believe that she was. But I went through the biggest and the most aggravating thing in the world with the satanic cult. Because what I said, she said she was in a satanic cult, exactly what you said. But what the Church of Satan said was that she was not she was not a member of the Church of Satan. I've never said that. I never printed that. And the Church of Satan came out and issued a huge release a couple days later and had my name on there saying that I was printing that and it never was said. And I had a little, listen, I wanted to stay on my side of the river and let those people stay on their side of the river and all be well. I did not want to have any disputes of what it was. So I clarified and showed that was never said. Do I believe she was in some kind of satanic cult? Absolutely. But I did not at any point say she was a member of the Church of Satan. She was a member of a satanic cult, and it could have been her and Elytte as far as I know. But I do know they had various rituals, which was just some awful things where she would use his semen and rub it on her. It was just crazy, crazy stuff. I have a letter somewhere where she describes what they did prior to the murder. So I don't know. It's crazy.
Okay, so putting aside the Church of Satan, which I understand too, they can really harass you online. I'm familiar with that whole process with them. I
was fighting back, because it wasn't true. They weren't true. I mean, you can say what you want. I have thick skin, but you got to at least be true. At least be true.
Sure. So, but you believe that she was involved with a cult of others besides Elytte, or just her? I believe
she had. I do believe that she had bad people around her, and they were doing crazy things. I mean, I believe they had the Book of Satan all over the place. They did have the Satanic Bible. They had it in the house. They each had one in their cars. I do believe that they were practicing something. Can I say that there was, it was a 75-person cult? I don't know that. I just know that they were, involved in something. You know what I mean?
Okay, so that's interesting. So they definitely weren't into Satanism. Okay, we can go that far as well. Maybe not through a member of an official church, but not just her and her boyfriend and her husband, but the roommates as well were all involved in the same kind of faith.
No, I don't believe that the roommates were. I don't believe that the roommates were at all. I believe that they were and never told anybody, and they had their own little rituals. The roommates that were from here are not bad people. I mean, they just happen to get unlucky. They let people stay with them. I mean, they just happen to get unlucky. That happened.
How did they meet? Did they meet through Craigslist too?
Who? Miranda and Elytte?
No, the roommates and Miranda and Elytte.
No, Elliott's friend lived up here, so he knew him for a long time. I guess the kid used to live in North Carolina, and he knew Elytte, and then he moved up here. So they were friends. Apparently Elytte was in Pennsylvania before. He was up here before years ago or something as kids. So they were like childhood friends.
How did they wind up in Alaska? They were both born in Alaska?
No, they didn't nobody winded up in Alaska. Miranda was born when Miranda was born, she's a military baby, so she was kind of born in Wallissa, Alaska, I believe. And they lived there for a while before they moved, and then she moved to North Carolina. So Elytte was never in Alaska.
Elytte was never in Alaska. Now, Elytte, what kind of sentence did Elytte receive?
Same thing.
He's life without parole.
Life without parole. He made the same deal. He appealed, and he was denied. Same thing. And she's in the process right now, actually, currently. I just did something on it a couple of weeks ago of trying to get her sentence overturned because she wasn't told the right things and one of those type of things. And there is stuff going on with it, but it's a dead issue because of the fact that she's missed her time.
Right. Well, the murder happened in 2014. It's 2018 now, so she's only been in prison 4 years.
Yes.
And she's just getting around now to start wising up and saying, hey, I got to get out of here. Let me try some appeals.
Yeah, a little late. I mean, you should have thought about that. But, no, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's only 18 years old.
You know? Everybody became the world, the world literally became fascinated with these people and this story. And at the end of the day, when it was easy to read and be done, and everybody else was going on with their things, I continued to pound the pavement to find out that it's not really that. They were just two idiots who literally went out and killed a man for absolutely no reason. They did what they did, and it was dumb. And now they're going to pay for that for the rest of their lives. And it wasn't as flashy as this story had everything from the beginning, and I knew that going in. You had drugs, you had sex, and you had murder. Are you kidding me? Who doesn't write that story?
Did Elytte confess anything to you as well?
No, Elytte, I didn't talk to Elytte. I didn't talk to Elytte because here was my initial thing, and this is why I cut Miranda off as well. When I did the interview with Elytte and I drove him up, I told you, I let the guy in charge now, Brad Hare, he knew. There was a bunch of police that knew that I was picking this guy up and coming back. And he gave me his story about what a good wife she was and what a good mother and how she was, just trying to make a living, and this man molested her and did all these kind of things. The victim, that is. And I printed that story because that was his story to tell, and I printed that story. Later to come back that I watched the video of him confessing to police that he lied about everything. So at that point, what am I going to use him for anymore? I don't have any more to talk to. You know what I mean? Well, why would I talk to him anymore after that? He was a liar from then, so anything he says to me now, if he told me the sky was blue, I'd walk outside. I don't know. You know?
Okay, so as far as Elytte goes, he didn't initially confess to you, but he did confess to the police later on under interrogation. Now, he pled guilty or he went to trial, he cut a deal as well, right?
Cut a deal as well, same thing. They both did at the same exact time, sat right next to each other.
Oh, boy. Okay. Now, what was his childhood like? How did because if she had such a horrific childhood, I'm sure that his had some problems as well.
I didn't do too much on him, to be honest with you. He kind of I think he confessed because Miranda got the spotlight on this whole thing. So I didn't really do too much on him. So as far as his childhood, I just heard he used drugs a little bit here and there, and then got heavier into drugs later on. But I didn't really do too much on his background because he wasn't as fascinating as Miranda was. Miranda seemed to be she was the all-star of their team. So she was the one that got the focus.
And what kind of drugs were they using?
Heroin, crack. That's from what I understand. I don't think Miranda did many drugs. She never really talked about using a lot of drugs. So yeah. She did say some. She did some, but she didn't really say she was on. She didn't really do too many drugs. And the sad part about it, at one time she had her life together prior to this. Like she got a job, she was doing this, she was doing that, from what I understand, and then just went downhill.
Yeah, 18 years old. Yeah, you start dabbling with heroin at such a young age, man. It's really it just cuts off so much of your future. Even without all of the childhood abuse and all the other problems coming at you there.
That's what I said. She had a horrific life. I make no mistake. She had a horrific life. And I'll tell you point blank, and I would say this to anybody that asked, and I have. The woman, as crazy as she is, and as much as of a liar as she was a fantastic mother. She talked about that child up and down a storm. She was a fantastic mother. I believe that 110%. And it's a shame that in 10 more years that child is going to Google her mother, and she's going to read it, and she's going to come looking for me one day and ask me questions about her mother. That I will guarantee.
Yeah, and people don't know who's listening on the air. They don't realize the kind of, you tell a story on the radio or in your article there, your column. But, you live this kind of stuff 24 hours a day. There's stuff going on all the time, and people do contact
all the time.
you.
It's nonstop. Yeah. It's nonstop. My phone doesn't stop ringing, just on regular things. My phone doesn't stop ringing. It's a constant. Yeah. It is a constant grind. And I'm happy to say that there's times where I love it, and then there's times where I hate it. But you've got to do the right thing, and if you're doing the right thing, then this job you should be proud to be in this business. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a political reporter, so I don't get into all of that kind of stuff and whatever, and that's fine. But we have the ability to do so many good things for people, and that's basically what I try to do. You know what I mean? Like, again, my main reason behind this entire story was to find out if there was anyone else that may have been suffering or missing because of it. And you know, and that led me and sparked me into the whole, 30-year-old cold case, Barbara Miller.
We'll get to that in a minute. A couple of questions on it. You mentioned that Samantha Barbour, that she was molested around 3 years old, I think you said?
I think it was like, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's 5 or 6.
Okay, but so childhood abuse. Now, this was by her own family?
Yeah, it was by her uncle, and he was convicted of it. He was convicted and spent time in prison. So that's why I said I got those court documents on that.
Okay. And what
I
else?
talked to a judge in Alaska during the period of this time. I talked to a judge up there, and he told me point blank, it was one of the most horrific abuse cases he's ever seen. So.
Now, do you think it's possible that the people who abused her and treated her so horrifically as a child, that they were involved in the occult and witchcraft and Satanism, that kind of stuff?
No, I don't. And her mother, I spoke to her mother several times. And then I got a phone call one day a couple of years ago from Miranda, and her mother killed herself.
The mother killed herself during this the court proceedings?
Nope. Miranda was already convicted, and they found the mother dead. She had overdosed, I guess. Took a bunch of prescription medicine and was found dead.
So in the last couple of years, her mother...
I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, it wasn't long ago. But yep.
Oh, boy. Now, when she was claiming that she did these 22 other murders, ritual murders, for this cult or whatever, did she ever give you names and dates and stuff like that?
She gave locations and time periods, and we had it searched out. I mean, they did extensive. The police here went out and they contacted every state that she claimed it in. I mean, they really did their jobs. I mean, they really did, and they went after every little thing that she said. And they talked to, FBI officials and state officials and from everywhere, and just nothing's there. I mean, it is what it is. Nothing's there. And again, she came back later on and admitted that she lied. That she didn't do any of it.
Right. But then again, she could be lying when she denies it.
Oh yeah, who knows? You're right. Like I said, if she says the sky's blue, I would question it. You don't know.
Yeah, there comes a point you're talking to a witness, and if they lied to you before, maybe they're lying now too. You
That's right.
never know.
That's right.
Somewhere the truth is in there. But now, when she was naming these locations,
and that was my point. You just said is my point. That was my point. Somewhere between all those fairy tales that she told lied the truth. So that's why I said even if there was just one, it was worth it to continue to go down that road. That was my point of that, of continuing to go. Because everybody's like, well, who would believe 22? I said, I'm not saying I believe it. But what I'm saying is if 22 gets narrowed down to 10, and 10 gets narrowed down to 8, and 8 gets narrowed down to 1, or 1 gets down to some guy got stabbed and lived, and didn't know who did it. That was my point. But
yeah, it's a pretty big leap to go from, petty theft and stuff like that to premeditated murder, where you have a whole plan with a ligature.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. She didn't go through the school of criminals. She went all the way, right out of the gate.
So these other murders, she would name locations. Did she ever have any corroborating evidence that she was in those states and in those locations?
Yep. Every single one of them. That's the part I'm telling you. It was so elaborate. She was in every one of those places where she said. Every one of them she lived.
Okay. And so then when she was telling these stories, how did she describe these other murders? Like the same kind of process, and hiding in the back?
No, one she said that she shot him in the head. Another one she stabbed. Basically, she said that she would lure them in, and she was involved in them. There was other people there, and she would lure them in and then kill them in alleys. And I don't know. Stuff like that. She didn't get into any kind of crazy long details like this one.
Gotcha. And did she have names for people that were actually missing?
No, never gave me a name. Never gave me a name. Never gave me a description. Never gave me the only thing she said is where the locations were. So we scanned the world along with everybody else. And believe me, when I put that story out, everybody under the sun was running to all these states because they wanted to be the one to cover it. And I was like, go have at it. Go get it. If you're a reporter and you're in Florida where she said it was, and you find somebody, have at it.
Now, what about Elytte? Was he ever questioned about these other murders, and what did he have to say?
He originally said that she told him the same thing, and he believed it. And after that, I mean, not that much. He didn't really say that much more about it. So I believe he believed her.
Right.
I believe that she told him that she did. I do believe that. I believe she told him that, and he believed it. So.
Yeah, and if she would have had practice telling these stories first to Elytte, over and over, getting him all worked up, then she would be more convincing when she's telling the story to you, because right. She's got it all imagined in her head. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now, give me an idea. What kind of rituals were they performing?
Like satanic cult rituals?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. She never really got into that. The only thing she did say they did was these. She would cut him, and she would take his semen. I mean, that was what she said, and put it on herself. I mean, as odd as it sounds, but she didn't really. There was no like slicing up a lamb or anything like that. She never really told me anything like that. I would love to sit here and tell you that there was these crazy things, but there wasn't. She never really got into it. And I guess maybe I should have asked. I don't know. But at that point I was like, I mean, how much could you take in one, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And what about like animal sacrifices? Ever talk about that?
She didn't really say that. No, she didn't really say that. She didn't really say any of that to me.
Okay. Now, did any of her friends or associates come forward to you? Because obviously you're right in the middle of this story. She's confessing to you. You must have been contacted by other people. Any other interesting sources or surrounding her?
Yeah, I talked to everybody that she knew from down there, from in North Carolina. I spoke to the supposed father of her child, but none of them really said anything that would have been overpowering. That was big news. Just that she was a drug addict and she was a liar. The biggest thing people told me was she was a liar. That knew her. She was a liar. So.
That's interesting. The father of her child. Now, what was his story? Was he the same type of guy? Drug addict, street kind of person?
I gotta tell you, the guy called in, so I wouldn't know if it was even him. He just called in and said he was. So I had no confirmation. I never wrote anything about it because, again, it could have been, Brad Slack from down the street.
Amazing. Okay, we're coming to the end of this segment, and when we come back, we're going to have a little commercial break. When we come back, it's about a 5-minute break. We'll come back, we're going to be talking about the Barbara Miller story, which our friend here, Francis...
Now that, my friend, that one's a good one.
No Satanism in that one, okay, but we're going to...
I'm going to tell you what the country needs to do in cases of missing people now. I'm telling you, there's a solution out there, and there's a great organization that will help, and I'm going to tell you all about it.
Okay, great. But before we get to that one, is there anything I've left out that I've forgotten to ask you about the Barbara, the Amanda Barbour story?
Miranda, yeah. Is there anything else yes? The only thing that I would say on it is, after the course of the last 5 years of my life, I am burnt out of Miranda Barbour. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense. Because again, and I get it. I get it, because everybody wants that one missing, tidbit of it. You know what I mean? But there really isn't. What's there is there. The best thing I can tell you, and I got to be honest with you, BBC did a great job. If you want to know and follow that story, go to BBC and pull up, or just Google it, Miranda Barbour, serial killer or liar. It was very well done. It was, I was involved in every step of that process there, and I knew every single thing that was going on. It is as true can be. Some of the filming you'll love. Stone State Entertainment did it. Chad Evans. You're going to see police talk in there. You're going to see it all, and it was very, very well done.
Okay, and that's available. You can find it on YouTube?
You can find it on BBC's website. Yeah, it's BBC. BBC, I don't know, BBC. Go to BBC. Just type, it's Miranda Barbour, serial killer or liar. I'm sure It's everywhere now.
And it'll pull up there on the BBC there. Okay,
But I'm telling you, you pay attention when you come back. I'm going to tell you about these cold cases, and you're going to see. And I never knew about it, and there's people out there that don't know about it, and you're going to be the outlet. You asked me about the promotion. So one thing I would promote is this organization. So.
Well, why don't you mention it right now before the break? What's the name of the organization?
The organization is NAMUS, 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 and it's a national for missing persons. And what you do is there's people you contact, you get a hold of them, they put it into the system, and they search, and the database is just unbelievable, and it scans all over the place. Right now, we're waiting on something that could be Barbour Miller.
And wait, that's NAMATHUS?
No, NAMUS, NAMUS.
NAMUS, and this is like they have run a database. And did you use this database when you were looking for some of these people that Miranda was talking about killing?
Absolutely, no. I never knew it existed. By dumb luck, one of the regional directors, who is awesome and just knows everything about this business, period, reached out and spoke to the police about it, and that's how I found out about it. And then I ended up doing several interviews with her, and it was just fantastic. I mean, just the information that you can get from them, and the amount of resources they have. And what it is, I mean, I'll give you the short end of it. Is what happens is if somebody goes missing, they take DNA, and then they'll put that DNA into the system. It gets tested in the whole 9 yards, and then it's always in there. So now if a body turns up somewhere in western New Mexico, that could be linked back to a missing person from Kentucky. It's just that impressive.
And this is a privately run organization. The FBI doesn't have
No, it's government funded. No, it's government funded. Government funded. It's just that they don't get any. There's just no recognition out there for it, and I'm hoping there's a bunch of states now that are making it law that coroners and police and anybody in law enforcement mandatory enter into the NAMUS system so that they automatically have it. It's God sent, and the people that run it are just amazing people. So.
Okay, excellent. We're here today with Francis Scarcella. The book he wrote is Miranda Barbour, Inside the Mind of a Teenage Killer. Now, you got involved, first of all, your history with the Miranda Barbour story. You know, you got the confession out of her. That was a feather in your cap there. Now, afterwards, though, this Barbour Miller story came up.
But that wasn't afterwards. It wasn't really afterwards. I heard about this case when I first was down here about 10 years ago, and I could only do so much. I tried, and I could only do so much. Nobody was willing to open up this case. It was so frustrating. And I went through police chief after investigator after everybody under the sun to try to get this case open. And a couple years ago, the guy in charge now, Brad Hare, I had spoke to him, and he said, they were having staffing problems, but he promised he was going to open up the case. Turns out a couple years later, the case gets reopened by another police chief who would come in, Chief Tim Miller. So they open up the case. I begged and begged. I went to his office every single day. I said, here's the deal. I will be at your office every single day until you look at this case and open it. If not, every single day you will have to tell me no. And eventually you will get sick of it. I will not. I will continuously knock. And you can decline comments. You can say whatever you want, but I will not stop. And that went on for about 30 days. Finally, he said, okay, it's a good thing. So over the course of those couple months, next thing you know, let me give you the history of it. So Barbour Miller was a woman, 30-year-old woman, lived here in Sunbury. One night she goes to a wedding, never came back, gone, vanished out of thin air, just gone. And nothing was done about this case by anybody. Now, if you read some of the papers, you would hear that, yes, they did, they tried, they did this, they did that, they did the other thing. They also did an extensive search one time before in 2002 and yada, yada, and I get it. And I get all of that stuff. But what they didn't ever come out and report was this case is linked to another case, in my belief, of a man by the name of Scott Schaefer. And you can research him. You want to talk about a fascinating guy. I'll get you him to come on your show. Here's a guy that spent 17 years in prison and faced the death penalty for a crime he did not commit, of murder. He was they was convicted of a murder he didn't do.
What's his name?
And it was linked. His name is Scott Schaefer. You just got to Google Scott Schaefer with my name, and you will read all about it. And his case is fascinating. And it's a shame that a man who spent 17 years of his life in prison for a murder he didn't commit. But in the meantime, while he was in jail, when he gets arrested for this, he gets a phone call. His fiance gets a phone call from one Barbara Miller. And one Barbara Miller says, I know that he didn't do this murder, and I'm going to go to the authorities. Yeah, well, guess what? Less than 2 weeks later, she winds up missing and gone forever. This guy
wait a minute. Barbara Miller calls the police and says, I have information that Scott Schaefer is innocent, and then 2 weeks later, she turns up missing.
She didn't call the police. She called Scott Schaefer's fiance and told him that your soon-to-be husband is innocent, and I'm going to the authorities. Less than a week later, she goes missing for the rest of her life. Gone. Never to be found again. And I sat with this man, and let me tell you about this man. This man here is a degree black belt. He's a guy that you walk down the street, you just wouldn't mess with. He's afraid of nothing, and he's the nicest, kindest individual you'll ever meet in your life. I just got to know him. He's just a great person. And to spend 17 years of your life in jail for something you didn't do and miss your child growing up, miss funerals of your parents, it's crazy. It's crazy. So that was one of the deciding factors to me to really get heavily involved in this case. Now, if you fast forward, through the course of the reinvestigation into this case, they decide that they believe that this lady is buried inside the walls of a house. Again, story goes worldwide that they're digging out a house because they believe she's entombed trying to get a wall open. And good luck trying to go through 20 inches of cement. And if she was put through a wood chipper, as they say, again, alleged, good luck finding those pieces. Make a long story short, all of a sudden, here comes Dr. Henry Lee. I'm sure you heard that name.
Sure.
Dr. Henry Lee's involved. He actually took parts of the evidence. Dr. William Bass from down in Tennessee, from the Body Farm. You heard of the Body Farm?
Sure.
Dr. William Bass is involved. All of these world-renowned forensic scientists are searching. Enter Namath. Out of nowhere, while everybody's waiting around trying to see where you can get the money to do all these kind of things and all these kind of tests, enter Namath. So the police chief gets a phone call one day and from these people. He wasn't even going to return it because he didn't know who they were, or an email rather. So I said, he tells it to me, and I said, I looked it up online. I said, I don't know. I would call them. I said, it looks to me like it's like a government thing. I would call them. So he calls them, and needless to say, they saw it through the media, wanted to help and get involved, and now here we are all these months later, and now they've taken care of everything. They take all of the samplings and the DNA, and however that works, however it works, they do all of that, all of those things. Once that occurs, then they get a match. If there is a match, then it will automatically link Barbara Miller to one of her family members through the DNA. A case up here in this way, about an hour and a half from here in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, was just solved thanks to Namath and another great state police trooper, Corporal Sean Williams, a relentless cop who just continuously is great people. Further than this one, through Namath. And now Namath is actually starting to push towards getting put in different states as mandatory, so you have to enter it. So where you live in Washington?
No, I'm in Nevada.
You're in Nevada. So Nevada's not a state yet, but that's pushing it. But now say something happens out there in Nevada and they find a body in New York and it's one of your family members. Your DNA could match one of those people and, case solved. It's just like that, and it's not an easy process. I mean, there's a lot of things that go behind it, but that's the majority of it is what that is that. And they're just great people. They're just fantastic people to deal with. Every time I've ever had to call them or get some kind of information, they're honestly right then and there. They give it to you. They want to push just as much, and they want to do what he knows and how and everything they do. I have never been more impressed with an organization in my entire reporting career.
Okay, Nams, any Let me ask you
LAMUS.
now, Scott Schaefer, because I guess he's like the key to all this, because if he was in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and then soon as she starts nosing around on that, she turns up missing, what is the story with Scott Schaefer? What are the circumstances involving the crime that caused him to wind up in prison?
A guy by the name of Ricky Wolf was found dead on a boat launch right outside of right in this area, and it was a 2-year case where they did not have anybody to arrest. And 2 years later, they arrested Scott Schaefer as part of it. There was a couple of them that were arrested. Another guy, Billy Hendricks, was also arrested for it. He was released as well. They both spent 17 years in jail. 2 other people were Scott Schaefer and Billy Hendricks. So Schaefer had nothing. Barbara Miller apparently may have either been there the night this Rick Wolf got murdered, or she knew about it and got and was going to turn in the actual people who did it, and winded up missing.
Okay, Schaefer and Hendricks, were they did they cop a deal or did they go to trial?
No, they went to trial and lost, and they had the death penalty. They were facing the death penalty. So then the death penalty got pulled off of the table. They ended up just getting life in prison, and then Scott Schaefer was ruthless and relentless in his efforts from inside that jail to show facts that he was not the man that did it. New evidence emerged that showed receipts where they weren't there. They were somewhere else that night. And before you know it, they had PCRA hearings, which is the hearings to get them out of jail. And everyone agreed that they will serve time served. And he had to plead guilty to, 3rd-degree murder, I think it was. But he got out of jail that day. So he did not want to plead to it, obviously. But what would you do? Would you have went back to trial and faced it all over again, or would you have walked out of jail that day at 17 after spending 17 years?
I would have ran. I would have ran out of jail.
That's right. That's exactly right. So he ran out of jail. He took it and ran. And from that point, he continued to fight and say, I'm still. He pled no contest, is what he did. So he didn't plead guilty, he pled no contest, which is saying, I'm not saying I did it, I'm not saying I didn't do it, which was a great move on his part because he continues his fight to this day, and he's going to get justice for spending time in jail that he didn't have to. That should have never happened.
Now, what was the prosecution's theory of the case that convicted Schaefer and Hendricks?
That was that trial was in 1990, so I was a kid. So basically, from the stuff that I got and my talks with Scott and interviews with Scott, is basically they put him at the scene. He was never there. I mean, that's the long end and the short of it. He was also a biker, and he'll admit it that he was selling drugs back then, and he'll admit all that stuff, and he has no problem owning up to all that stuff and saying, yeah, I did all those things, but I'm not a murderer. So he was with a rough crowd, and that crowd just happened to be the ones that, the reason why he was convicted.
Gotcha.
So basically, that case, once this guy gets his names cleared, nobody knows who did that one either. So.
Now, what was the prosecution theory of the motive? Okay, they're bikers and stuff like that, but what was the motive?
Owed money for drugs.
Drug debt for money. Okay.
All right. Miller was no saint by any means, but she didn't deserve it. She was no saint by any means. But I met with the family a bunch of years ago, and I sat with that family, and I vowed to that family that I would do everything in my power before I was ever retired, that I would find some sort of answer and bring that woman home. And I vow to that to this day, and I will continue to do that to this day, and I will not stop doing that until it happens. So I'll probably be reporting until I'm 99, but I'm not going to stop.
What was Barbara Miller's age when she died?
30.
30 years old.
When she went missing, she was 30. I mean, they pronounced her dead. Legally, they pronounced her dead, but she could be 2 blocks down the street for all I know. I don't know.
And okay, so it was 1989 that she called up, right, okay, so Hendricks had a fiancé because he was just barely in prison. He was only in prison for a short time. He had just barely been,
No, Schaefer had the fiancé, yeah.
Oh, Schaefer and Hendricks, right, okay, Schaefer. Yeah, Schaefer had a fiancé. And they weren't, so he had a fiancé before he went into prison.
Yeah, yep, and Barbara Miller called her while he got arrested. A couple days after he got arrested, Barbara Miller left a message to his fiancé and said, your soon-to-be husband did not commit this crime. They have a tape. They left a tape and the tape went missing. There was a tape record. You know the old-time tapes, the recorder tapes?
Sure.
Well, they had a tape of her voice saying, hey, this is Barbara Miller. Your soon-to-be husband did not commit this crime, and I'm going to go to the police if they don't drop the charges. So she hears the message. She gets a hold of Schaefer in jail and says, hey, this woman came out of nowhere. He said, I don't know her, but go find her. Well, guess what? She's still looking, and Scott Schaefer's fiance ended up dying of cancer years later.
Okay. A couple questions now. They say they have an answering machine type recording tape. Now, did you actually hear this tape, or they just told you?
No, it's missing. It's in every report. I mean, they've reported it for 30 years, but magically the tape's missing.
Has anybody actually heard the tape besides them?
Here's the answer to that. I don't have that answer, but it's in all the police reports. So obviously somebody either heard it or knew about it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That just wasn't made up back in 1989 while she was alive, and then all of a sudden dead. You know what I mean? Like the timeline wouldn't match. If you'd have said 20 years later, hey, there was a tape, by the way, but this happened while she was still alive. So they were searching they were hoping that she was going to come forward before she was alive. The ex-fiance made the police report on it.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the fiance now. So she got the phone call from Barbara Miller. How did she know this was the same Barbara Miller? Did she know Barbara Miller?
The fiance knew who Barbara Miller was from being in that circle. Scott did not. But yes, it was the same Barbara Miller from that circle.
Okay, so now when Barbara Miller called the fiance, now the fiance is the only one with this information, or do we know of other people Barbara Miller told about this too?
Again, that's all in police reports, and from my understanding, from dealing with the police chief at the time, it was in a lot of different various police reports. So all I can tell you is that many more people knew. But again, you have to remember, you're talking about a 30-year-old crime at this point. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there that who knows, you know what I mean? Do I believe that the state existed? Yes, because if you do the math and the timeline on it, the woman was still alive, Scott was in jail, the fiance is now saying this woman's going to come forward, and then she goes missing. That was where the link was. There's been a million different stories over the course of 30 years that there was a link between this Ricky Wolf homicide and the disappearance of Barbara Miller.
Okay, and do we know about the fiance telling anybody else about this? Any friends or people who
actually made a police report? Yes, she called police. There was an actual police report, which is what I'm telling you where the timeline was, because the police report that was done about her making this phone call, she was still alive.
Right. But just try and follow what I'm trying to say to you, because if she only told the police, and the only people who knew that she was the alibi for this murder was the fiance and the police, then the only people who could have killed her, Barbara Miller, would be the fiance or the police. Is there anybody else, the fiance? Who else would have known that Barbara Miller was a witness to this murder?
Well, that's where it's going to get a little tricky, and I got to watch my P's and Q's, because there is a suspect who's been a suspect for 30 years. And I'm going to say read any story you want, and you can get all that information on that. The suspect has sued the media, including myself, for defamation and for, repeatedly using his name in articles. However, on the back end of that, I didn't use his name. The police used his name. Everything that we've printed has come from police reports. So there is a suspect. There has been a suspect for 30 years. All we did is report it. And again, there's court proceedings going on literally as we speak because of this. So that's where I'm going to just have to say I have to watch my P's and Q's on all that. Again, that's a police suspect. It doesn't matter to me who the suspect is. I just want the lady to come home. And I've explained that to the suspect. So there it is what it is. And again, I'm only one. When I originally did this story and I put it out, because the part that you don't know until you read the story is that Barbara Miller, where they believe her body was buried, was inside a judge's house. Not only a judge, the president judge.
You know what? I don't think I caught that. And I read a few articles. I perused them, to kind of, because I figured, I guess tell me what this.
The house, it's public record. The house was owned by a judge by the name of Samuel Rank, R-A-N, C.K. And he owned the house. And living in the house was the suspect's sister at the time. Suspect's sister also was arrested for various drug offenses. However, with those various drug offenses, she went in front of the man who she rented from, and most of the charges were dropped.
Okay, that's fascinating. Now,
Yep.
Now, so Schaefer and Hendricks get busted for this crime, but there's another suspect. He's the one who sued you. So we want to be
not a suspect in the Ricky Wolf homicide. He wasn't arrested for the Ricky Wolf homicide. I don't know if there's a connection to that. That was totally separate case. Yeah, but there were circumstances between Barbara Miller and the suspect, who was her ex-boyfriend at the time, and she made several reports claiming abuse and this, that, and the other thing.
No, but there is a suspect. We'll just call him suspect, okay? There is a suspect who was a suspect in the disappearance of Barbara Miller. What caused him to be a suspect in that disappearance, according to police?
There was reports leading up to her disappearance for a year that he was going to kill her. She was afraid for her life. There was harassment. There was just report after report after report after report. And then she came to the police because she got death threats in the mail that said, if you don't quit talking and you don't be nice to this man, you're going to end up dead. And I did all stories on all of that. So there was a big lead up to that. Okay.
Again, clarify for me, does he have any connection to this other murder, the Schaefer and the Hendricks murder, that would cause him to give him a motive to want to silence witnesses in that case?
I can't. I don't know that. And again, that's where I'm in the P's and Q's section of this whole thing. I can't. It's not. All I can tell you is, as a reporter, I am unbiased in this situation, other than the facts that I see that were presented in front of me. And the facts that I see that were presented in front of me are exactly what they are. If that's again, I'm on the fence on leaning, because I don't want to give any personal opinions or anything like that. All I can tell you is that the connection is there based on previous reports and stories that were done.
Okay, and we don't want to falsely accuse anybody or make allegations that wildly or whatever. And if the person who's a suspect, if he feels like he wants to give his side of the story, wants to come on the show, I'll gladly interview and give him some time as well. I'm making the offer, I make the offer. Everybody's invited. Everybody's invited to come on the show. Everybody has a chance.
That's great.
Everybody
has to call me. I want to be on the other end.
Everybody has 15 minutes. Now, what led police? I guess we'll call it the judge's house, right? What led the police to suspect that there was evidence inside this house, the judge's house?
Oh, that wasn't just a magical revelation. That was already reported who owned the house. Nobody went there because it was a judge's house. So nobody wanted to go there. Apparently, this is alleged. This is what's alleged from the new investigator, who says everybody knew about this house, but for some reason nobody had the guts to go to this house. Well, this guy had the guts to go to the house because he ripped it apart and sent it all over the country. So
at the time of the disappearance, there was widespread rumors or tips coming in that this house was connected to the disappearance?
Yes.
Okay. But nobody touched it. Has anybody interviewed the judge, Sam Rank? Anybody in the media interviewed him?
He's dead.
He's dead now. Okay. So he's not talking. Okay.
Not talking.
He's dead now. He's not talking.
I tried to interview the sister who lived in the house, and she didn't have many religious things to say to me, and now she's dead.
Oh, the suspect's sister now also is passed. Now, how did she die? What's the circumstances of her death?
Some kind of illness, I guess. I don't know.
Okay. Now they tore apart the
died.
Yeah, people die. People die. It's not all connected to this case.
Yeah.
But now, I saw the pictures. They were tearing apart the house. What did they find? Did they find anything in the house?
Again, that's a police question, because they're not going to tell me that. But I can tell you that what I do know is that, they had to give some sort of answers on what was going on. So all I know is this is where NamUs becomes very important, because NamUs has DNA and they have potential whatever. I mean, again, their NamUs isn't going to tell me that stuff either. That's all classified, locked down information. But if anybody's from out there, NamUs, I'll be more than happy to listen to that information. So I don't know what they have, or if they have anything. I just know that there is things going on, and they have been working with them, and that part they did release to the public. That's it. Other than that, I don't know. I don't have any of the other. I don't know what they found.
I got you. And how long ago did they tear apart this house? How long ago was it?
Last June. But again, it's not like, you know this business. It's not like CSI where you just go on and it's solved in a week. So I get it. It takes time. Everybody wants answers. Myself, Scott Schaefer, who wants the answers more than anybody. But it's not right there. You know what I mean? Like, the stuff is just not right there and readily available. And I wish it was. I wish it was as easy as they needed a week to tear out the walls. The wall in the house was like 26 inches thick. Like you could have landed a helicopter or a 747 plane on it. It was ridiculous. And there was no reason for a wall to be that thick. But try busting through it. And God loved the people from this area, man, because people came out of the woodwork that donated their equipment, donated their time, donated food, donated drinks. It was a hot summer week that week. So people came out of the woodwork. Everybody in the area wants their answers. Everybody wants answers, but you got to get them. I mean, I get it. It's not something that's overnight. So we waited out. Again, thanks to the great people down at NamUs. They're on it. They're helpful. You have great police working on it. It's one of those things. And again, another case that I wind up in court, Miranda Barbour, I winded up in court subpoenaed. I did another case up here where the guy, Rocco Franklin, he's the father of a lady by the name of Maria Snooty Spencer. They supposedly killed, well, she was convicted of killing her ex-husband. He fled the country to Argentina for a year. I interviewed him in jail. I got a jailhouse interview with him. I ended up subpoenaed in court. So why not get sued on this one too? Keep the record going.
You might as well. You're going to need your own bench over there at the courthouse. Now, you said there was a 2-foot thick wall in this judge's house, right?
Yep.
Now, do we know from what are those things called?
Yeah, it was an add-on. If you're asking me, it was an add-on addition to the house.
Yeah, building.
And guess when it was built?
Oh, 1989, I bet you. Same time.
1989.
Okay. And that's okay. So we have a building permit that shows that this 2-foot thick wall was constructed right around the same time.
Now, see, you're a private investigator, and that was very clever thinking.
Oh, sure.
You said, was there a building permit? And you're 100% accurate. However, I went down that road. I'm not a private investigator. I asked. Guess what? There's no records of any permits in 1989.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, too. So there's no building permit, so then he can't even sell the house, so we're not running into problems. Okay. All right. Nope. Now, I have some questions. Now, this town is called Sunbury?
Sunbury.
Now,
yes.
What's the population of this? This is a city, the city of Sunbury?
Yeah, it's about 10,000 people.
10,000 people. How big is the police force? How many cops?
Well, that's a touchy subject, but right now they should be at about 13 or 14. Right now they have 4 or 5. It's ridiculous.
Okay.
The situation with they're down power, they're down everything, and that's why this kind of case kind of stalled is because you lost all of the police. And again, Brad Hare's out there doing everything he possibly could do to keep everybody moving, but it's not an easy thing. You got 5 guys running around, then you got me, pain in the neck reporter knocking on his door every 2 seconds to give me Barbara Miller updates. I get it. I get it. So that's why there's been kind of a little bit of a lull, but I don't believe that that's necessarily the only reason. Again, I think our good friends down at NamUs are working hard, and we'll see.
Yeah, if you got a small town, 10,000 people, a police force, let's give them the benefit and say there's 20 cops. You know what I mean? Like even a police force of 50 cops, 100 cops is a very small police force to be investigating a murder, that involves tearing down 2-foot thick walls.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what about, are the state police involved in helping out?
Well, it's Pennsylvania's a little different, so it's like a jurisdiction thing. State police were involved, and they did a great job in assisting on what they did. But again, it's the jurisdiction thing, and it is Sunbury's case. So yes, state police are involved. They do help when they can. And again, me personally, I'm hoping for the one corporal who's also on the NamUs board, and he just is another guy who knows everything about these kind of things. I'm hoping that that those guys can get involved at some point. But it's kind of more like a jurisdiction thing, so it's not as easy as just, okay, let's send the state troopers in.
I got you. Okay, so
I got to tell you, throughout the course of all of this, I really learned to realize that it's law enforcement is really tough because they just don't have the people to go out and do things. It's easy to sit back and follow only one case, but they get a million other calls that come in at once. So it's like it's not just one case. There's 500 cases going on. So it's kind of tough, and I get it. I understand it now better than I did.
Yeah, right. It's so true. People have no idea. I was just talking to a client the other day, and she says, well, how easy is it to get away with these kind of things? And I says, well, we'll look at that TV show the next 48 hours. They work on a case for a couple of days, and if they don't get a confession, they're on to the next case because people are getting killed.
You're on to the next case. Yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy.
In Chicago, there was 60 shootings in Chicago.
Yeah, that's madness. I wouldn't even cover out there. I like to cook, so I'd be cooking before I'd be a reporter in Chicago. Oh, you're a private investigator. Why don't you come on up to Pennsylvania? Tackle it on. Let's go. Get your skills out here.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I got so much going on. I'm a little overwhelmed these days. All the stuff I'm working. Yeah,
I'm sure.
So,
but yes, fascinating case. My advice to anybody out there that's listening or that go read about it, man. Go read about it, and anything anybody can do to get involved and help in those kind of situations police would love it. Anybody that whatever, there's stuff that comes in all the time, and go check out NamUs. Get your local police on board. Get your congressmen and your senators and your state representatives and your mayors and your coroners and everybody else. Go push NamUs because they need to be all across the country. And that opens up the doors. The more states get involved, the more that opens up the doors to solve other cases. And I'm a big advocate of it is because, again, you don't know what's in the minds of people. So if this lady or anybody's missing a person and they're clear across the country and they weren't ever entered into the system, you would never know. So go out there and make it a law and get all of these cases entered in and watch that list just drop and people find their loved ones.
And Francis, the publication you're involved in, how can people find that, the newspaper you write for?
DailyItem.com. Very simple. DailyItem.com. Come check us out. We do a lot of festivals and a lot of good stuff.
Daily Autumn?
Say it again?
Yeah, you're saying DailyAutumn.com?
No, Daily Item.
Daily Item. Daily Item.
Yep.
Yeah.
Daily Item. Yep.
Francis is one of these the thick accents, his East Coast accents. It's hard for the average person.
Yeah. I'm 100% Italian on top of it all. So come on.
Okay. Francis Scarcella, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to leave us with before you go?
I appreciate your time. I appreciate you reaching out. This has been again. I'm one of those guys that rarely says no to getting out good messages. If I had nothing to talk about, I would have said I appreciate it, but I can't do it. So I'm just one of those reporters that will stay in the trenches. I fight the good fight for good people all the time. I never will waver from that. I get both sides of the story. I will not change who I am for anybody ever. And again, I got very lucky because of my pro wrestling background. So I know a lot of big guys if anything goes down.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. One day we have to have you come back and just talk about the wrestling life. It's a whole fascinating.
Oh, you'd be more fascinated with the wrestling life than anything. I can tell you locker room stories that would blow your mind.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely have you come back, my friend. Thank you so much, Francis Scarcella.
I appreciate it. Take care.
Okay, we just finished with this. Francis Scarcella. The book is called Miranda Barbour, Inside the Mind of a Teenage Killer. But the thing is, it's not available right now on Amazon, but keep an eye out for it. He says it's going to be going back up. Fascinating stuff there. You know, it's always interesting with these big, especially when Satanism involved too as well. He mentioned how he started hearing from the Church of Satan stuff, they're complaining, putting out a press release, objecting to his reporting on there, and you hear that so much in these cases here with whenever it involves satanic ritual abuse, a lot of online stalking and harassment. You can ask David Scherter about that. We've had him on the show several times. So the fascinating story of Miranda Barbour, an 18-year-old little girl, involved in this. I've heard this story about Alaska, but he's saying that he spoke to her over 100 times, 100 hours of a conversation with Miranda Barbour, and that the story about her punching Sarah Palin's daughter in the face is untrue. Okay, I wouldn't put that. I got to tell you, the public perception of the Palin family is nothing like I uncovered in my work, in my case involving Sarah Palin and Todd Palin. I was involved in a case in Alaska. My client was a Shelley Tripp, who was a massage therapist, a Craigslist massage therapist up there in Anchorage, Alaska. And one of her clients, according to her, was Todd Palin. And she sold her story to the National Enquirer, and then they tried to back out and not pay her. So I became involved in that, trying to prove her story and collect from the National Enquirer. And ultimately, the whole case wound up in a congressional investigation into Secret Service misbehavior because one of the Secret Service agents who was guarding Sarah Palin later on went down to Colombia with Obama and got involved in that incident in the brothel down there. So it was one of my big cases involving congressional investigation, Secret Service misbehavior, and also the vice presidential candidate. And ultimately, when we returned all of our evidence from the Anchorage Police Department there, because Shelley Tripp was arrested for prostitution ultimately, and they seized all her devices, her computer, her cell phone, all kinds of thumb drives and notebooks and calendars. And when all that evidence, when her case was over, and the court ordered the Anchorage Police Department to release all that evidence, it was released to me, so I could go all through it with a fine-tooth comb and prepare exhibits and stuff like that for the congressional investigation. The same day it arrived at my office. It was the same day Sarah Palin announced that she was not going to run for president in 2012, I believe it was. And that one of the reasons why, she says, well, there's all these people out there accusing me of things and accusing my husband of affairs. So anyways, I have a lot of involvement with Alaska. Got a lot of, I guess you might call them disgruntled fans. People unhappy with people that are huge fans of Sarah Palin. Who are not quite fans of me. Okay. But I've heard, man, let me tell you something. I've heard all the gossip about the Palin family, down there in Wasilla, which is a teeny tiny little town. And it would be very unlikely. It would be very unlikely if, this Miranda Barbour lived in Wasilla that she wouldn't have run across, the Tripp girl, I forget her name. Anyway, Sarah Palin's daughter. It would be very unlikely. Very, very tiny little town. As a matter of fact, there's what was it? Because there's a thing in Alaska too where they pay you to live there. So more people, a lot of people just say they live down there, just to get the check, and they have different residents. They have a residence in Washington State, but they'll have a place in Alaska too where they'll have their name in somebody's house. And there's something about how there's the ratio of structures to people is so far off that there's no way that all those people actually live there. There's a very, very small number of people that actually live there. And that's how Sarah Palin became a mayor of this little tiny town. And there was all kinds of scandals going on under her mayorship down there. And then she became the governor later on, when there's even more scandals. But Todd Palin was a snowmobile racer. That's how he came to fame. And Sarah Palin was like a waitress for a while there and a beauty pageant contestant. And one of the stories we used to hear about is their weekly poker game at their home down there in Wasilla. It would be these wild, drunken poker games that they would have that would spill out into the street with fistfights of the Palin Valley. And it was also, it's more recently too, it was widely reported. A lot of stuff I heard wasn't reported at all. But widely reported was that the Palins, the whole family, had an issue with another family living in their neighborhood, and the other family was having a barbecue, and the Palins showed up in force and got into a big fist fight with the whole other family. This is all stuff. And, and even when Sarah Palin was running for vice president, her son or her daughter's boyfriend, something like that, was arrested for burglary. They got another relative arrested for burglary, living in a meth house. Fascinating when you really get down to the whole story of the Palins. So anyway, so that's where this good old Miranda Barbour comes from, that same little town, Wasilla, Alaska. So it would be fascinating to know we'll have to look into this a little further, what the more details are of her satanic cult involvement were, especially if there was some kind of connections to Wasilla. I would definitely be interested in that, because I've heard some things about that too as well. By the way, too, part of the issues I can tell you some inside behind the scenes stuff. Part of the issue is the public persona of Sarah Palin as being this person who's a right-wing Christian and conservative and all this kind of stuff, which could, she's right-wing, that's for sure, too. But as far as being conservative or being a Christian, their behavior doesn't exhibit that whatsoever. And Bloomfield, what's his name? Richard Bloomfield? Broomfield. Nick Broomfield, the guy who did the documentary about Sarah Palin and had this storyline all prepared that she was this right-wing conservative Christian, he was aware of Shirley Tripp and her stories. In fact, he even added it to his film. And he was very aware of everything that went on, all the truth. But he went ahead and portrayed her as this, right-wing conservative Christian, for whatever motive he had there, who knows. But that wasn't my experience whatsoever that I can tell you firsthand. Okay. Now, what else is going on with that? Good old Barbara. Interesting too, we just had good old Patrick from Europe on the show about the whole satanic cover-up program to kill the satanic cover-up. And this sounds like almost like one of those same kind of stories where when the story first comes out, and there's other people involved, there's a cult involved, there's more murders involved. But then ultimately what happens is that the things kind of get covered up and it winds up that, she made up the whole thing and she lied. I don't know. We have a confession. And we know later on that she says she lied, she changed it. So we know she's a liar. Either she lied when she made the confession or she lied later on to cover up the confession. So we know she's a liar. We just have to figure out when. That's what you got there, right? What are you going to do? You can't do nothing. Can't do nothing. If you like today's show, check out OppermanReport.com. We have a special members section, and I have a lot of new content we just put up in there. If you want to contact me, you can go to OppermanReport.com, become a member, and get access to our special members section with exclusive content, exclusive videos, exclusive shows, all on there. We just added on there, what was that? We just added an interview. Oh my God, a heartbreaking interview I did with Jake Grant from Now You See TV. Ugh. My God. He invited me to come on and talk about the Catholic Church, the grand jury report that came out there just this week in Pennsylvania. We're our friend here. We're just talking to Francis Scarcella, and might have asked him about that too if I had a chance. I didn't think of it. But 900-page report comes out about child abuse in the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania. And there's in the 900-page grand jury report an introduction, a 16-page introduction. Then I'm actually going to read the whole thing. I'm going to create a broadcast where I just read that whole 16 pages. It's not legalese. It's a heartfelt narrative from the grand jury members who are lay people. They're not lawyers. They're not prosecutors. They're just grand jury members like you and me who get picked to be and paneled to be on a grand jury. And they pour their heart out in this introduction. Now, you see on the news how they talk about this 300 priests targeted, named, and 1,000 victims, right? And, right after that, you see all this stuff, all the people talking around 300 arrests. The 300 arrests rounded up, thanks to Mr. Trump, he's rounded up all these pedophiles. Well, you got to pay attention. You got to read because there's 300 names, but there's only 2 arrests. And if you read the grand jury report, and you don't have to read the whole 900 pages, I don't expect you to do that. That's a special kind of person who wants to do that kind of stuff. And to be able to sit down and read this stuff, because it is brutal, to read some of the things on it. It's just horrific. That was going to change your life. If you read it, it's going to change you, but if you just read the introduction, there's a lot of horrible things in there too as well. But you'll find that the 300 names that they came up with were names that the Catholic Church already had. This wasn't a new investigation or new stuff. There were a bunch of subpoenas and a bunch of time, like about 100,000 pages of documents, hours of stuff, testimony things. But this is stuff that the Catholic Church has known all about for many, many years. This is nothing new. They've known about this. And we know that it's more than 300 priests because it says, well, some weren't reported and some things were lost. Things were covered up, And same thing with the victims. Some victims didn't report. Some victims, their reports were lost. And some were covered up. So we know it's many more than 1,000 victims. We know it's many more than 300 priests. We also know that there were 3 previous grand jury reports done on the same exact topic in 3 dioceses, Catholic dioceses, that weren't covered in this recent report. And in those previous cases, again, there's 3 of them, and one was in 2005, one was in 2011, I think one was in 2009. And again, dozens of arrests in those cases, or dozens of names, people named, and again, hundreds of victims came forward. When you read, and they were producing child pornography in these churches, they were grooming these kids from middle school, trying to groom them for oral sex by coming up with bizarre, perverted stories about the birth of Jesus, and giving little gold crosses to some of these little altar boys, stuff like that. After they had molested them, so that they were a target for other priests to come forward and molest these kids. It's like which kids were ripe to be targeted by other people. So it comes to a point where we just got to say, what is the purpose of this organization when it seems like, if you look at the amount of time and energy they're focusing on their sexual abuse of children, and that seems to be their main focus, It seems to be that what they're up to mostly. And the rest of these church services run an hour or 2 on Sunday, and whatever the confessions they're taking and counseling they're doing and running these schools and stuff, it seems to be like an afterthought, and somebody's got to say it. Because and not everyone's going to read 900 pages. I know that. Okay. But you can read the 16 pages, and I'm going to make it easy for you because I'm going to read it to you. But when you got in a tiny little state like Pennsylvania, there's 3 previous grand jury reports on 3 previous dioceses, and now you have this other one which covered like another 7 dioceses. This is, every diocese is involved in this, and it's being covered up from the top down. There was a letter to the bishops by Ratzinger telling them how to deal with these, how to cover up these cases. So it's being covered up from the top down, and everyone down at the bottom, at the lowest levels, this is all they seem to be doing. You have this much time to focus on this. You're going out buying chains, gold crosses to put on little boys' necks to target them for your friends. You're producing child pornography to share with other people. You're interrupting classes to go in and groom these kids for your activities. You're constantly luring, targeting, and then the actual act of abusing these kids all over and over. There comes up when any organization, okay, whether it's a police force or at a large organization, like a police force, a government agency, a business, a club, when you got 300 documented, proven criminals, okay, that aren't being removed, aren't being turned over to police, when you got 300 out of an organization, a couple of thousand, in the whole state, how many people you got working? It's a criminal organization at some point. The organization exists to perpetuate those crimes and cover up for those crimes. And you can't, And also, too, Ed said, well, Ed's anti-Catholic. Ed's blah, blah, blah. Right? Ed's anti this. That's what I'm lying to. But if you read the grand jury report by these lay people, some of them are Catholic. Some of them got to be Catholic, right? Devout Catholics. So as horrific as that is, that's and I'm in my member section right now, and I'm going to be interviewed tomorrow by Pierce Redmond on American Freedom Radio, along with Heiss. What's his name? Robert Heiss, Bob Heiss, something like that. And he's coming on too with us, and we're going to be talking about this. And that woman who was Anthony Bourdain's girlfriend, who was also just recently outed as being involved in this kind of activity. There's another show in the member section, Brian Heiss I'm thinking of. There's another show that I just added to about Natasha Cornett, who called herself the daughter of Satan. And again, the same kind of thing where, she was with this group of kids. They were Satanists, openly, Satanic Bible, same stuff, all this stuff, they did rituals, same stuff, and over and over, and at the time of the conviction and confessions and the trials and all that kind of stuff and the plea bargains, it came out, all this activity was going on, and they were up to their necks in it. But then years later, this didn't happen, that didn't happen, no, they're innocent, it was all, it had nothing to do with that, When, so anyway, I had interviewed her mother, Madonna Wallen. I had interviewed her previously. There's a 2-hour interview with her, but then I just did another hour with her, and we added that to the members section. So you can go up there and check that out at OppermanReport.com. A lot of great new content in there. And always adding, always bringing you new stuff as much as we can. So I can't thank you enough for all your support of the show here at OppermanReport.com. Let's see. I got some big stuff coming up. A lot of people are familiar with the I did that interview with Patrick from Europe about the Program to Kill, and he had done an interview, and he's done a big interview either too, with this gentleman. Let me pull up his name here from the website cavdef.org, CAVDEF.org. His name is George Cleese, and I'll be interviewing him tomorrow. In the morning, early, I'll get up and interview him, and we'll be talking about all these different serial killer cases, all on that same lines. Dave McGowan's work, Patrick's work, who runs the website, Program to Kill, Satanic Cover-Up, LOL, Field and Love, on YouTube. So we're going to be doing 2 hours with him to cover all his information. I also have, that reminded me too, because I was talking to that lawyer who represents one of the mothers in the John Wayne Gacy case. So that reminded me, he was supposed to come on a show a couple of years ago, and backed out. And I contacted him again to nag him, see if you'd get him to come on. He says, no, he still can't come. But he hooked me up with a private investigator who knows a lot about the Gacy case. He knew Gacy and had dinner in Gacy's house. So I have him lined up to come on in September. He's off in Europe right now, so we're waiting for him to come back when I interview him. I got another interview I did with John Brisson. Last time he was on, we talked about the Finders. This time we're talking about McMartin Preschool and all those daycare center cases, Presidio and West Point and stuff like that happened in the 80s. I'll be interviewing him. I already have his interview in the can. It may go up in the member section. I may use it. Oh, I interviewed too Bobby Brown from the Warrant. She married that guy in Warrant. She was the cherry pie girl in that video. She's my cherry pie. Interviewed her on Saturday. I have that in the can too. That'll be coming out shortly too. I'll be bringing it forward to you, either in the member section or on one of the live broadcasts. We'll find out there too. Don't forget too, we'll be adding some stations shortly. So if you want to advertise on the Opperman Report, just give me a call or an email at oppermanreport@gmail.com. It's a great opportunity to advertise with us. Because we've gone on 3 stations in California we're working on right now. So that would be, you're locking those low rates, like our friend over there at CartKing.com has done. Let's see. Like 1 minute left. You run out of things to talk about. So let's see what else. Hey, what else I got lined up here? Never ends. Oh, yeah, real quick, I was talking to you on my live show Friday night. I was talking about how Manafort, how I predicted that these guys, if you want to be a defendant, man, this guy's got everybody working for him. He's got the KGB, he's got mafia connections through Trump, he's got all his political connections. Okay, gotta go. All right, thank you so much.